Hey guys, and welcome back. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to episode 10. Today I'm going to be discussing two different things. I'm going to be discussing the comedy show Sprung, which you can find on Freevee. And then also I'm going to be diving into issue 3 of Stray Bullets. Now, for those that are into the comic book world and you haven't read Stray Bullets, what's great about the series, guys, besides being a fantastic series, most of the issues, while it's nice to have read the previous issues, you can read them 9 out of 10 times as standalone issues. They might make references to characters from some of the earlier issues, and of course it's always nice to have that background, but you don't have to until a little bit later on in the series. So I'm going to start today with my review of Sprung. I'm going to break it down and get into the nitty-gritty details, and then we'll go from there to Stray Bullets. I'm going to try to do it all in one video. If I get tired, I might do 2 separate videos and release 2 separate videos. But I'm going to try to do one big episode. So here we go. Sprung came out in 2022. It was created by Greg Garcia. Greg Garcia, some of you guys may be familiar with his name. He created Raising Hope, which is another fantastic series that also stars 2 of our main people here, Garrett Dillahunt and Martha Plimpton. And then the big one I think he was known for, and a lot of people have probably seen this one, which is My Name is Earl. My Name is Earl with Jason Lee, which won a bunch of awards and stuff like that. So he's the showrunner, creator. He directed 5 of the 9 episodes. No, excuse me. He directed all 9 episodes, and he wrote 5 of the 9 episodes that Sprung currently has on Freevee. There's talks about a second season, but it's still up in the air. So I'm going to go into like the main cast here. I'll give you a breakdown on that real quick. We have Garrett Dillahunt, who's the main lead. His name is Jack. We have Shakira Barrera. Her character is Gloria, who starts off in the very beginning, which you'll find out, as Jack's girlfriend. We have a guy named Philip Garcia, who is playing Rooster. And then we have Martha Plimpton, who is playing Rooster's mom, Barb. And then we have 2 supporting characters that'll become bigger characters the more we get into the episodes. And that would be Claire Gillies, who's playing Wiggles. And we have a guy named James Earl playing Melvin. So that's like our main cast. So I'm going to go in and get into a breakdown of episode 1 for you guys. The series starts off and we're in jail. And we see our main character, Jack. He's in his early 40s. And he's with his cellmate, Rooster. Rooster, who is like a 20-something Hispanic guy, mustache, kind of skinny, short. Jack's in his early 40s. Dirty blonde hair. We see Jack, and he's got like a toilet paper roll, and he's talking down at the toilet. And we find out that Jack is in fact talking to his prison girlfriend, who happens to be on the 3rd floor, and I guess through the toilet they can have conversations. We find out they've never actually met before. They're in the middle of having this conversation. Catching up on life and their everyday stuff, and excuse me, and all of a sudden the guard walks in and he's like, "Okay, you 2, you're going home early." And they're like, "What?" Rooster's like, "I still got like 3 years," and Jack's, "Aren't you? You've been here for like 26 years. I thought you had like another 3 or 4 years." And there's like, "Yeah, prison overcrowding, and with the old Ronavirus, we're letting all non-violent criminals out." So basically, story takes, like I said, it takes place. It was okay. So it was released in 2020. Excuse me. It takes place in spring of 2020 is when it actually takes place story-wise. So we're knee deep into the Ronavirus, as our guard likes to call it, and things aren't looking pretty, if you guys can remember that, you know, especially in those first 2 months of the Ronavirus. So basically, Jack and Rooster are let out early with their belongings. Jack has like $40 to his name. Rooster, I don't even think has that much. We see Rooster hanging outside. We see Jack outside the prison. Jack approaches Rooster and he's like, you know, do you think I could, you know, use your phone or crash with you? And Rooster's like busting his chops. He's like, oh, now all of a sudden you want to become my best friend. He's like, after being years your cellmate. And Jack's like, okay, you know, I get it, you know, whatever. You don't want to, you know, help me out. I get it. And as he's walking away, Rooster's like, hey, dude, I'm just fucking with you, you know, like I'm just busting your balls, dude. It's all good. You can, he said, you know, I see you got $40, you know, like if you want to give me that $40, you know, you can crash with me and my mom for at least a few days, you know what I mean? And Jack's like, that's the only thing I got, you know. He's like, that's the deal, man. You give me your $40, we'll give you a place to stay for a couple of days. So it's the only thing he's got going, you know. So he decides to go ahead and do that. They're picked up in an old Dodge Pacer, and we're introduced to Barb. Barb is Rooster's mother. This is played by the lovely Martha Plimpton. She's got like a crazy looking hairdo, and she's a fiery redhead, kind of a loudmouth. You know, Rooster's like, hey, Mom, I thought you quit smoking. She's like, I told you lots of lies, son. This is just one of many, you know. And she's introduced to Jack. As they're about to drive away, they see a girl. Looks like she's Hispanic. She's probably early 30s. She's standing on the side of the road. She looks a little upset. Rooster's like, hey, Ma, hold on one sec. So he approaches her. He's like, are you all right? And she's like, who are you? What do you want? And he's like, I'm just trying to help you. He's like, I'm Rooster. I'm with my buddy Jack. My mom just picked me up. We're going to my place to crash for a couple of days. He's like, I know you don't know me, but if you want to give me whatever money you have, you can, you know, join us, and you know, it's all good. She doesn't have many options, you can tell. She's desperate, so she agrees to it. She gets in the car. She's introduced to everybody. As they're driving along, a conversation takes place, and basically she's like, hey, do any of you guys know my boyfriend? His name is Jack. He was on D Block. And Rooster's like, oh, hey, we were both on D Block. And she's like, no way. Well, maybe you know him. He's like, I've never met him, but he describes himself as like 6'6", early 20s. He looks like Alex Rodriguez, you know, the baseball player. And he's like, hold on a second. And he points to Jack. He's like, that's that fool right there. She's like, hold on, no, he's white. He doesn't sound anything like him. And he's like in his early 40s at least. And he's like, oh no, that's him. He says, I remember him talking into the toilet bowl, talking to some girl on the third floor. And she's like, she's looking at Jack and she's glaring at him. She's like, that's you? And she's like, what about this pic right here? And she pulls out, you don't see it, but she pulls out this dick pic that he sent her. She's like, is that your pic too? Because that doesn't look like a white man's cock, you know, and it's not. And Rooster's like, hold on a second. Let me see that picture. And he takes a look at the picture and it's like, oh, that's my cock. He's like, he's like, Jack, I thought you said you were sending that picture to your sister. You know, like, you know, none of these characters except for maybe Gloria and Jack have a couple brain cells floating around. Rooster is definitely a little bit of a ditz, and Barb's not much better. He actually thought that, you know, he was sending a dick pic to his sister. So of course she's pissed off at Jack. She's upset with the whole situation. She realized she was lied to. We get to know Barb a little better as we're driving home. They're going for like this like fancy neighborhood, and she tells Rooster, she's like, grab the wheel. And as an audience, we're like, what's going on now? Like, these fucking people are just all batshit crazy. she stops. She runs to a house and grabs like an Amazon package. And she comes back in the car and she's like, we gotta make a living one way or another, And one good thing about this coronavirus is nobody's leaving the house. Everything's getting delivered, so we're getting all sorts of good stuff. So from there, we proceed to go to Barb and Rooster's house, and Barb gives everybody the lowdown and gives them the grand tour. She gives Gloria and Jack some old clothes that used to belong to her parents, some 70s stuff, so they got the funky 70s style going on, and she brings them to a bedroom that's got like a divider in the wall. I guess that used to belong to her other two sons, so the room's like split in half with like basically a piece of drywall, and from there she's like, okay, you guys can crash here, and I'll see you at dinner time. So they go downstairs at dinner time. Right before dinner, Jack sits down in the living room, watches a little bit of the news. Gloria joins him. She's still busting his chops. She's like, oh, you're in your 20s, huh? And he's like, listen, I was desperate. I wasn't think you'd like me for me. So yeah, I made up a little lie. I'm really sorry, I wasn't trying to be a jerk. But you can see she's a little bit still bothered by the whole thing. They watch the local news, and on the local news, there's a piece about a local hero, and basically it's focusing on this nurse that works at a hospital, and the nurse is basically living in the parking lot of the hospital because she's working extra shifts and stuff. So she has like basically a sleeping pad in the back of her like SUV, and she's just doing that. And she's talking about how she misses her kids, but this is the coronavirus and they're in the thick of things, and they really need the nurses there. So it's just mentioned briefly, a little local piece about her, and then we cut to dinner time, and Barb has made some sort of feast for everyone, and everybody's enjoying the feast. And Barb says, well, now this is great. We got Jack, we got Gloria, we got you, Rooster, we got me, we got a whole crime crew here, basically. We can start planning our next job. And Jack's like, oh, hold on a second. He's like, no, I just got out. I spent 26 years in jail, for just selling pot. That's why I got arrested. And, I don't want to go back. I want to enjoy the real world now. I want to enjoy life. And she's like, oh, that's fine. You don't want to help out. You don't want to help us figure out what we're going to do next and stuff. She's like, you can just leave. You can get out of my house. And she takes the food from him when he's in the middle of eating, and you can just get the hell out. But I mean, she's like, if you're going to live here, you gotta kick in. She's like, we were going to rob a local thug, a guy named Melvin, who has a whole stockpile of toilet paper and probably a lot of money as well. She's like, and we could have used an extra hand, but if you don't want to help, don't let me stop you. Just get out though. You're not sitting here. There's no free meals. So Jack is discouraged. He finally found, like he thought, a little place to crash for a couple of days, maybe get on his feet. He walks down the street of looks like a ghost town. There's practically like no one in this town, this downtown area of this town. He comes across a vending machine, and there's a homeless guy sitting across the way on the ground. Jack manages to find $1 off the ground, and he's sitting there with his shirt trying to rub the dollar, seeing if he can make it clean. And then he's trying to put the $1 into this vending machine. And of course, we all have that situation with the vending machine where you get that $1 that just does not want to go in. So he's sitting there and he's trying to straighten it out and trying to go in. He finally gets in and he goes, oh man, I could really go for some striped gum. I haven't had that in ages. And of course, that's $1.50. The only thing that you can buy in a vending machine in 2022 is apparently some breath mints for $1. So he goes ahead and he gets some breath mints, and then he proceeds to very carefully try to get it out of the machine. And unfortunately, he slips, and pretty much all the breath mints but one fall on the ground. He puts the one into his mouth and tries to appreciate that and enjoy that little stupid breath mint because he's starving. Meanwhile, the homeless guy starts laughing at him. He's like, "What's so funny? What are you laughing at?" And he's like, "Well, you do realize, number one, you picked that dollar off the ground that you found. Then you rubbed it with your shirt, and then you tried to put it in the machine. All these germs that you're basically spreading while you're attempting not to come in contact with germs and not come in contact with the COVID. You know, it's kind of a little bit ridiculous when you think about it." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess you're right, you know." So Jack is kind of discouraged. He realizes that, like, this isn't going to work, obviously. He doesn't have a pot to piss in. So he goes back home to where everybody's at. And they're, you know, basically just finishing up dinner at this point. And they're like, Barb's like, "Well, what are you doing back? I thought you were too good for this." And he's like, "Listen, the plan you guys just described about going into some thug's house and just robbing him blind, cold cocking him, taking his toilet paper and whatever money he has is just stupid." He's like, "If we're going to do this, number one, it should be bad people and bad people only. So I have a little bit less guilty of a conscience, number one. And number two, do it better." And she's like, "Well, I thought you were no career criminal, Mr. Pot dealer, you know, Mr. Drug dealer." He's like, "No, I'm not like a gangster or some sort of career criminal, but when you're in jail for 26 years, you learn certain things." And we have a flashback to different cellmates that he's had over the last 26 years. And they kind of go into the right way to do things, the smart way to do things. Number one, we have him talking to him, like one flashback, he's talking to one guy and he's like, "You know, if you ever want to find out someone's ATM card number, you basically just follow them, find out where they get you, which ATM they use. And you basically stick a camera like on like a little pole, like, you know, they sell cameras that are like this big nowadays, guys. You just stick it on the pole and you can find out what his numbers that he's punching in." So they figure that out, how to do that by following him. Then another thing, he has another flashback. He's talking to another cellmate that came in for, I guess, murdering people. And he's like, "You know, and I was watching Law and Order, and on an episode of Law and Order, they showed you how to make chloroform out of some household supplies and bleach that you have in your own kitchen." So that's how he learns to make chloroform, you know. So they basically proceed to come up with a better version of their original plan. They go into the apartment, and Melvin is watching TV. They sneak up on him with a chloroform rag, and he basically put it to his mouth. He passes out, and out of the bathroom walks this short blonde girl, who we'll find out a lot more about in later episodes. Her name is Wiggles, and they do the same to her. Rooster recognizes Wiggles automatically, and it's like, "Wiggles, what are you doing here?" And Barb's like, "Oh, that's Rooster's stupid ex-girlfriend. Fucking ditz. Goes figure, she's dating Melvin, this idiot." But you could see that, like, he's visibly upset. He really cared about her. So from there, they take the ATM card. They take a couple rolls of toilet papers from the back, so it's not noticed. And they go to the ATM and basically clear out everything he has in the ATM. They also then go on to his laptop when they get back to his place, and they make a bunch of ridiculous purchases, like a bunch of porn sites and a bunch of other stuff. And the reason they do that is one of Jack's cellmates tells them most people won't report money being missing if they come up with receipts for embarrassing things. So, like, you know, like, he basically put a bunch of empty liquor bottles. He gave him some receipts for some, like, a bunch of liquor, some receipts for like these porn sites and stuff like that. Stuff like, you know, gay porn, and not there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, like, stuff like that might be embarrassing for someone to wake up and be like, "What?" Like, here's like 6 bottles of hard liquor and some receipts for some porn website. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I shouldn't report that. So, you know, they basically had their very first successful heist, and everybody's pretty happy for the most part. You can see that Gloria is still not thrilled with Jack and how he lied to her. And then we also see a Rooster kind of like spying on Melvin and Wiggles, watching them kiss, and you could see he's visibly upset. I guess that's like to him, like that's the one that got away. And then we see Jack in the house, and he's going through some of the Amazon packages that Barb stole from people, and he grabs 2 tablets. And one he grabs, and he goes to the hospital, and he finds the car that from the nurse that was living in the hospital. She's basically living in the parking lot in her car, and he basically manages to slip that in the back seat of her car. And then he also manages to slip one at her relative's house, the one that's watching her kids while she's working all these hours. And then later on, when they get home, there's a news piece focusing on this nurse again, and basically how anonymously she received 2 tablets and how wonderful it was because now she can read bedtime stories to her kids at night. So yeah, basically that is the first episode of Sprung. Like I said, I had seen My Name is Earl before. This one, I saw the trailer for it on Freevee, and I was like, it looks stupid but funny. Didn't even realize the connection between My Name is Earl and this one. And once I watched Sprung, the only thing I said after watching was, man, I really want more episodes of this show, because it's these ridiculous characters, you know, fuck-ups, criminals, but essentially good people at their core. But just well-written characters. And there's, I feel like, so very few comedies, whether it's television, especially movies, where we have well-written, just funny characters. And this does all that. And then once I found out it was the guys that made My Name is Earl, which I loved back in the day, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go down the rabbit hole and see what else Greg Garcia has worked on. And that's when I watched Raising Hope. And that was cool too, because it was Garrett Dillahunt again with Martha Plimpton. And that was a fantastic show. I think it was about 4 seasons, but that's also on Freevee. And we watched, me and the fiance watched all 4 seasons in like pretty much like 2 weeks. That's fantastic. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, guys. I'm a big fan of comedy, and especially just well-written characters and well-written comedy. This sadly only has 9 episodes. They're very good 9 episodes, and like I said, I'm hoping at some point they will do a season 2. The way they ended it, I'm not going to give that away because I don't want to give away spoilers for that. They very well could leave it at season 1 and there'd be nothing wrong with it, because they gave it an ending that I think everyone will be happy with. But on the same token, the selfish part of me is going like, hey, listen, if they can find a way to do it where it's well written, sure, bring on a season 2. I'm all about it if they can do it successfully. So that will be my review for Sprung, season 1, episode 1. Check it out, guys. It's absolutely amazing, and I think it's something you'll enjoy very, very much. I'm going to take a quick second, get a sip of water here, and then I'm going to go ahead and dive into Stray Bullets, issue number 3 by David Lapham. Just give me 1 second here, guys. I'm still nursing this damn fucking upper respiratory 3 weeks into it, for Christ's sake. It's annoying as hell. But I'm slowly getting better. Just got to get rid of this damn cough. So, Stray Bullets, as I mentioned before, is by David Lapham. This is issue 3. It's called The Party. This is another great issue. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of the episode, what's great about Stray Bullets, most of the stories are self-contained. They do have characters that will show up in different issues. It goes back and forth with different timelines, but it's well written and it's all very enjoyable. This is called The Party, as the name of the issue, and it takes place in Baltimore in 1980. Just give me 1 second. I am going to pull out my cheat sheet here, guys. and I'm going to go over different characters. Just bear with me for just a second. The main character is Led. He is a guy in his 20s, about 5'8", dark short hair. Then we have his best friend, who is Sonny, who's a little bit on the heavier side, chubby guy, also 20, somewhere in his 20s. We have Nina, who's a dark-haired girl, pretty, early 20s. She's a little bit on the quiet side. We find out early on that she is the boss's lady, Harry's girl. I mentioned Harry before in issues 1 and 2 of my review, if you've caught those. And we have her best friend, Beth. Beth is a blonde. She's loud, obnoxious, in your face. She's in her 20s. Those are the core characters for this issue. I'm going to also make note right now of some supporting characters that pop up for little bits. We have little Joey. Now, Joey, if you guys have caught my review of issue 1, Joey was in issue 1. He was in his late teens, early 20s there. In this issue, because it takes place in 1980, he's only about maybe 7 or 8 years old. Then we have Rose. Rose is Joey's mom. Rose is probably like 28, 29, curly blonde hair. She's a bit of a floozy. She's a drunkard. She's flirting with all the guys basically at the party. We have Spanish Scott. Now, Spanish Scott popped up briefly, guys, in issue 2. And the same thing with this one. He shows up briefly in issue 3. Scott will have a bigger overarching story later on, but he makes little cameos here and there in the meantime. And then finally we're introduced to a guy named Monster. The Monster, he's pretty much a monster. He's like probably in his early 30s, big muscle-bound dude, glasses. He looks like the guy you don't want to get caught up with. You know, that he looks like that psychotic character that you're like, yeah, I don't want to fuck with this guy. So those are our main protagonists in the story. Right now, I'm going to take some time and just get right into the actual issue itself. It starts off, and we see the gentleman Led that I described. Like I said, dark-haired guy, early 20s. He's running down, being chased by 2 cops. He's hauling ass. He's being chased by 2 cops, and then we cut to his buddy Sonny, and Sonny is also being chased by 2 cops. Sonny's struggling a little more because he's a little on the heavier side. At a certain point, as he's being chased by cops, he rubs up against a trash can and he throws something in there. And we can't really get a clear image of what he throws in there, but we'll go into that in a little bit. So as they're both being chased by cops, at a certain point they cross paths. And they're like, you know, Led's like, what are you doing, dude? You're supposed to meet me under the bridge by the park. And Sonny's like, no, we didn't discuss that. He's like, regardless, it doesn't matter. Quick, you know. And they're in downtown because they're being chased by these cops. They pull up to a car. There's a gentleman in the car. Sonny just shoots the guy right in the arm. And as he goes to do that, they open the door of the car, and a cop proceeds to shoot directly through the windshield and proceeds to shoot and kill the guy that was driving his car, or not driving his car, that was in his car that was parked. So that guy's dead at this point. And they're not the ones that killed him. It was the damn cop, for Christ's sake. So they pull the guy out of the car, and Led jumps in behind the wheel, and they haul ass out of there. Sonny and Led exchange, words. They argue, because Led's like, dude, this is some fucking bullshit right here. Like, I told you where to meet me. And he's like, did you at least get the stuff? And Sonny's like, what do you mean get? He's like, the diamonds. Did you get the diamonds? And Sonny's like, no, I didn't get the diamonds. You said you were going to get the diamonds. And Led's like, no. Listen, I told you, grab the diamonds and meet me at the park underneath the bridge. What don't you understand about that? So they exchange words. They're obviously not happy with each other, you know, but like it is what it is, you know, shit happens. Sonny tries to brush it off. He's like, okay, well, we'll get him next time. It's not the end of the world. You could tell Led is not very happy. Sonny's not very organized. He flies by the seat of his pants. Led's more strategic, more organized. Once they've taken off and they found like a little alleyway to safely ditch the car, they find the wallet from the guy that was killed. And Sonny's like, oh, well, let's look at this, $100. We should go throw a party. And Led's like, sure, why not? Let's go throw a party. They also realize, unfortunately, in the back seat of the car is a toddler sitting in a car seat. So they get out of the car. They walk down the street. They see some homeless people. They said, hey, you want a free kid? There's a free kid in the back of that car. And they kind of take off. We cut to 3 days later, and it's evening. It's at an apartment that belongs to Sonny and Led. And we start off by showing our man Spanish Scott, who makes his first appearance in this issue. Obviously, like I said, he was in the second issue. He's talking to this big muscle-bound guy who we find out is Monster. And he's like, hey, these guys are throwing one hell of a party, right? They're doing, this is a killer party. I'm having a great time. What about you? And Monster's like, listen, don't give the kid too much credit. Keep your eye on him. You know, and remember to keep your eye on Nina when she gets here, because Harry's going to be coming later on. He doesn't want his girl getting into any trouble. So Spanish Scott's like, sure, no problem, Monster. I got this, man. So then Monster proceeds to leave. And then he goes up to Led and he compliments Led on the party. And he said, congratulations. It's a great party. I'm having a good time. From there, we're introduced to a couple different characters. We meet Rose. Rose is late 20s, curly blonde hair, a bit of a floozy. She's got 2 drinks in her hand and a guy sitting on her lap. Big slobbish, monstrous looking guy, just kind of pretty much all but drooling all over her. She's having a good time. We're introduced to a little short kid that's about 7 or 8 years old. This kid looks like Joey from our first issue, and that's because he is. So Joey makes a reappearance in this issue. The difference is now he looks like 7 or 8 years old. So we're introduced to those characters. And then in our next scene, we have 2 of our main characters, Nina and Beth. They knock on the door, they come on in, join the party. Nina's a dark-haired girl in her 20s, pretty. Beth's blonde-haired girl in her 20s, pretty. She's a little more loud and obnoxious. Beth starts joining in on the hijinks, starts drinking. She recognizes Sonny, goes up to him and starts talking, and Sonny's getting drunk out of his mind. He's on the fire escape outside, pissing into the wind, and she's just laughing the whole time. Meanwhile, Led is kind of checking in on everybody, and he walks into the kitchen and he sees Nina, and Nina's just kind of standing by the kitchen sink. She's kind of staring into space, and he's like, hey, are you all right? Can I help you with something? And she just like lashes out at him, and she's like, leave me the hell alone. Who are you? What do you want? And he's like, well, my name's Led. I'm one of the hosts of this party, and you know, because you're a guest, I just wanted to check in on you and see if there's anything I can get you, or you need anything. You look like you're upset. She's like, I'm sorry, it's not a good day. She's like, I'm Nina. They, you know, have an introduction. Led's like, listen, I'd offer you a drink, but these bums, you know, unfortunately took all the booze. I'm thinking about going on a beer run. I just got to go check in on my buddy Sonny and making sure he's not getting into too much trouble. He's like, if you want to join me, you know, I'd love to have you. And she's like, yeah, sure, I'll go along for the ride. So from there, he goes and finds Sonny, and of course that's when Sonny's in the process of pissing off the fire escape, and he's with Beth, and Beth's laughing, and he's like, dude, come on, man, you're gonna get the cops here. We don't need this shit. And Beth's like, don't worry about it. It's under control. I'll take care of him. She's like, Nina, why don't you go with your new friend Led here, and we'll take care of our alcohol shortage. So Nina and Led, excuse me, they head out to the liquor store, and along the way, you know, Led is trying to make conversation with this pretty girl. He's like, so tell me, you know, what's going on? And she's like, you know, it's just one of those days, you know, my mom killed herself not that long ago. Life isn't going the way I expected, you know? And Letty's like, trust me, like, I get it. He's like, what we're doing here, like with Sonny, you know, we're trying to like make smart criminal choices to try to like pave our way for ourselves. But, you know, Sonny is like my brother. He's the greatest guy in the world, but he's also a bit of an idiot, and he's impulsive, and he doesn't stick with a plan. He's like, I'm not disorganized. I come up with a plan and I follow it through. He just flies by the seat of his pants and ends up fucking things up, you know? So they have like this moment where they connect and they can kind of relate to each other on a certain level. They get to the liquor store, and as they're about to enter, Led's like, fuck, I forgot my wallet. He looks at Nina and he's like, hey, can you give me one of your stockings? And she looks at him, one of my stockings? And he's like, yeah, just give me one of your stockings. So she, you know, she pulls one of her stockings off her legs, and he puts on his face. He's like, I know these people in this liquor store, and I don't want to get recognized. You know, I need something to cover my face up. So he goes in there and with a gun, and this is a stick up, Viva Iran. You know, the guy doesn't even really get a look at him. Basically, he points the gun to the guy's head, and the guy's head is the crown. He pops open the register. Meanwhile, Nina goes in the back and grabs like 6 cases of Bud. She puts it on a little cart, and they haul ass out of the liquor store. Now, while this is going on, we'll cut back to the party for a second, and there we have poor little Joey. He's upset. He can't find his mom. He's crying. He's like, where's my mom at? And this guy that looks like a thug, he's like, oh, you want to know where Rose is at, your mom? She's in that bedroom right there. And he points on the door. He's like, you don't even have to knock or anything. Just go on in. So little Joey, he's upset. You know, he barges into the room. And Rose, of course, is drinking while she's in the middle of a three-way with 2 disgusting guys. And she screams, Joey, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? So Joey, you know, runs out of the room crying. And he's even more upset. He's traumatized. Who wouldn't be traumatized by something like that? Nina and Led get back home, and they join the party, and basically, you know, he's like, you know, he tells Nina, he's like, I feel like we really made a connection. I have feelings for you, and I feel like maybe you might have feelings for me. And she's like, you seem like a nice guy, but you don't want to get involved with me. I'm nothing but trouble. She's like, if you know, I just want to run away from everything. She's like, if you want to run away with me, you know, fine. Let's get out of this. Let's get out of this life and start fresh. She's like, I think you're a good dude. He's like, I really like you. I could see this evolving into something, but I just can't like abandon everything and just take off down the road. So she's like upset, obviously, by this. She goes on her separate way into the party, and we follow Led. Led's in the kitchen. He sees Rose. she's wearing a bathrobe. She's like, "Hey, I borrowed your bathrobe. I hope you don't mind." He's like, "Oh, don't worry, that belongs to Sonny." And she makes some remarks. She's like, "I feel so bad, you know." She's like, "I'm 28 years old. The poor kid Joey, you know, he walked in. He's probably traumatized for life." She's like, "I just like having sex. Is there anything wrong with that?" And he's like, "No, nothing wrong with that, you know." And she's like, "Thankfully, I had my tubes tied." So he has this little brief exchange with Rose for about 2 seconds. He realizes he might have made a mistake with Nina. You know, he goes to find her and she's in the bathroom and she's putting on makeup. And he's like, "Listen, I'm yours. I'm all in. I think something's here. I'm staying with you, you know, like, that's it. I'll make this commitment." You know, there's just this strong connection between the two, this connection that you don't normally find between two people. So they proceed to make love, and they end up in the bedroom. And later on that night, as they're in the process of doing this, Sonny barges in and he's like, "Dude, guess who's here?" And Led's like, "You see what I'm in the middle of, man? You know, like, kind of like a moment here." He's like, "You don't understand. Harry's here." And he's like, "Harry?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then you see the expression on Nina's face, because she realized that, like, in that moment, she never told him that Harry's her man, even though they're not really happy or thrilled to be with one another. And he makes the connection. And then that's how the issue ends, basically. So that's, like, my breakdown and review of issue 3. Now, like I said when I started this series, guys, you're very rarely going to see me elaborate on projects that I think are garbage. I'm not going to do it. Like, whether it's film or comic books or whatever I review, I absolutely adore David Lapham as a writer and an artist. And issue 3 is absolutely fantastic, just like the first two. I honestly don't think there's a weak link in this series. Each issue keeps on getting better and better. At this point in the series, like I said, it is cool I would recommend, if you have the opportunity, I would recommend picking it up. Just because it's good to have, number one. Number two, like I said, some of the characters are going to make bigger appearances. And as you go into later issues, it's going to be nice to have the prior issues and the knowledge of the prior issues, because some of these characters that are getting introduced are going to show up in other episodes. They're not all going to be self-contained. Most of them are, but not all of them. Some of them will just make references to characters that were in earlier issues. So that was my breakdown and my review. Definitely thumbs up. Well worth your time, guys. I hope you guys are doing good. We're still stuck with this crappy weather where I'm at, and I'm just waiting for it to die so we can get some sunshine before we go into those winter months where all it is darkness and cold. At least in Jersey, that's how our winters turn out to be. Before I leave, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple people. Number one, my wonderful and lovely fiance, Jessica Fernari. You can find her artwork on Instagram at MeowchiRoar. Love the girl. She's amazing. And she did all my artwork for my Facebook page and my little logos and stuff, which you'll soon be able to get t-shirts on. Probably within the next month or two, we're going to set up an account with Threadless. So if you like the logo, you can just go on there and they'll make you a cool little t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever you want. So I got to give a shout out to her. And then also I got to give a shout out to my boys over at Not a Bomb, Troy and Brad. Those guys, as usual, are producing nothing but good episodes every week. They break down films that were a commercial failure or a critical failure at the box office. And these guys always bring it each week. They're amazing, so check their stuff out. Also, Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Sam and Will. These guys are awesome, and they're always covering stuff that, like, a lot of times because of them, I'm finding stuff I've never heard of before. I mean, they also cover a lot of mainstream stuff as well. And these guys are another great podcast. You can find all these guys at Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Pretty much you'll find both those guys. And then watch Skip Plus with Jose and Justin. These guys cover a lot of the newer stuff that's coming out in theaters, so you get like an honest opinion on what's coming out in theaters and what their thoughts are. They also do other stuff too besides just the movies and stuff. It's cool. They cover streaming stuff on Watch Skip Plus, and sometimes they'll talk about like an art exhibit they went to and they liked. So they cover a wide variety of different things, and that's another great podcast. Well worth your time, guys. And then finally, I got to plug my long-running love of Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. Michael Rosenbaum, like I said, Smallville guy, love the man. He's got a great personality, big heart, and whenever he talks, he doesn't just talk to like celebrities and talk about like what their projects are. I mean, that might come up in conversation a little bit, but it's a deep dive into their lives, what they've been to, their stories. He tries to connect with people, and I love people that try to connect. You know, that's awesome. So that's it. Episode 10, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you soon for episode 11.